Shalom and welcome to the Israel Policy Pod. I'm Neri Zilber, a journalist based in Tel Aviv and a policy advisor to Israel Policy Forum. It's boiling hot here in Israel these days, and it's not just the weather. The Netanyahu government, as I'm sure many of you heard, late last week decided to escalate and expand the military offensive against Hamas in Gaza, starting with Gaza City. To explain what it all means, including the very real costs if and when it does happen, we have our good friend back with us, Milshtein, to break it all down for us. Michael is, of course, a colonel in the IDF reserves and the former head of the Palestinian arena in Israeli military intelligence, the advisor to the IDF general responsible for the Palestinian territories, and the head of the Palestinian Studies Center at the Dayan Center at Tel Aviv University. This was, as always, a terrific conversation with Michael. As you rightly pointed out, there are still a lot of question marks, which we did our best to answer. Don't worry. But a lot of question marks nonetheless about the weeks and months ahead. But we also had to be honest with you, our viewers and listeners. All of the likely answers are not looking great, to say the least. So with that fair warning, let's get to Michael Milshtein. Hi, Michael. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Neri. I'm glad, of course, once again to that you are having me.
We always love to have you on the podcast, Michael. And we try not to abuse this privilege, but you may remember you were on 3 months ago already in early May.
Sure.
And I'll remind you, Michael, the introduction to that episode was verbatim, and I'll read it. Our good friend Michael Milshtein is back with us to discuss where the Gaza war is heading after the Israeli government approved plans for a major new offensive that it says will finally defeat Hamas. This was 3 months ago in early May, ahead of the Gideon's Chariots offensive. So now you're back with us, Michael, today to discuss where the Gaza war is likely headed after the Security Cabinet early Friday last week ordered the IDF to, quote-unquote, prepare to take over Gaza City as part of a new offensive that Prime Minister Netanyahu promises will finally defeat Hamas. So deja vu all over again. But my first question to Michael, it's unbelievable. But before we dive into the actual details of what this offensive may look like, what were your first general thoughts and impressions about what the cabinet decided late last week and this looming offensive into Gaza City at the very least?
And if you remember, Neri, actually, we heard the first time about the decision or the 5 points of the decision during Thursday night. And, when I heard them, or actually I read them, my first impression was that, I agree with everything. I read all the 5 points, and I think that you can convince any Israeli about them. But then you start to elaborate question marks, and it seems that you cannot implement even one of the 5 points, and that they are kind of a hollow points. For example, one of the major points in the decision is that we seek, or Israel seeks the effort to defeat Hamas and in the same time to release the hostages. And I'm asking myself, after 22 months, didn't we learn that you cannot really implement the 2 goals in one time? Mm-hmm. And second, there was a kind of a general argument, or actually slogan, that we want to establish a new regime or a new order in Gaza, which will not be Hamas, but will not also be the PA. So it's a kind of a mystery. Who is this next future regime, Palestinian regime in Gaza? And another point, which is full of questions, is how are you going really to convince almost 1 million people in Gaza City to evacuate their homes and to go to other places in Gaza? And what will be, for example, if only 1 or 2 or 3% of those Palestinians will say, no, we resist, we oppose the evacuation? How are you going to solve this problem? And, I think, Neri, if I'm trying to summarize the question about the impression of the government's decision, is that we are not being or the government doesn't really tell us the whole truth. I mean, you decided to take control or to occupy Gaza City. That's okay, but in the same time, you should explain to the Israeli public what is the price. For example, the security, from the security aspect, from the economic and the political aspect, and we will speak about it during our talk. And once again, I found myself Thursday night in the very sad, deep impression that here in Israel, our government really prefers to rely on slogans and sometimes on fantasies instead of realistic strategy. Because otherwise, you cannot really understand what is the plan or how are you going really to implement all your 5 principles. It seems that, once again, we find ourselves like when Israel promoted the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or the gangs, all the clans that are being promoted by Israel. Once again, fantasies and not realistic strategy.
Yes, you and I have spoken at length. I don't want to say for 22 months, but throughout about the gap between Israeli slogans from the leadership and even war plans and the reality of what can be done and should be done in the Gaza Strip. We'll get into all that in just a second. For our listeners and viewers, the 5 principles that Netanyahu laid out, as he said, for the conclusion of the war. Number 1, Hamas has to lay down its arms. Number 2, the release of all the hostages. So 50 remaining hostages, 20 of whom are still believed to be alive. Number 3, as he said, the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. Number 4, this alternative regime, civil administration that's not Israeli, but he only said not Israeli in English, not in Hebrew, which is interesting. But an alternative regime that you said not Hamas, not the Palestinian Authority. So what is left, nobody knows. And then the 5th one, I think Gaza should no longer pose a threat to Israel in future, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Yes. Which we can also...
And security control of Israel on Gaza, not direct one, not on the civil affairs, but only on the security level.
Right. And as you said, everyone can sign up for that, but it's a question of whether the current trajectory will achieve any of those goals. So we'll get into that debate in just a minute. Michael, okay, aside from the grand strategy and the principles for ending the war, in the immediate, I guess, weeks or perhaps in the coming 2 months, there may be an IDF offensive into Gaza City. I think that's fair to say. I mean, they've promised so much, although there is maybe one off-ramp that we'll talk about in terms of new negotiations. But okay, let's say the government has to make good on these threats and send the IDF into Gaza City. Professionally speaking, from your point of view, what is the time frame the IDF needs to prepare both its forces and, like you said, evacuating the 1 million people in Gaza City, the humanitarian infrastructure outside of Gaza City that needs to be prepared? What are we looking at in terms of just time frame and preparations needed for this offensive?
So as you described it correct, Neri, it's not only, a military mission, focused on military operations, much more complicated mission, because you need also to take care about 1 million people. You need to establish a military regime or a civil administration and take care about the life of 1 million people. I assess, and this is a very cautious assessment, that first of all, you will need between 6 to 8 divisions in order to promote the ground maneuver into Gaza City. And it means that, it's actually much bigger. I mean, the number of the units of the soldiers is much bigger than Israel had a year ago. According to all kinds of assessments here in Israel or IDF will need between 250 to 350,000 soldiers, which means that many reserve army soldiers will be called again to this mission.
Michael, why so many soldiers? You're talking not just Gaza City, but the entire strip.
Yeah,
the state division.
But actually, the coming operation is going to concentrate on Gaza City. But once again, you need to remember that inside Gaza City, first of all, there are 1 million Palestinians, almost 1 million Palestinians. According to my assessments, between 10,000 to 15,000 members of the military wing of Hamas, maybe hundreds or thousands of the other organizations in Gaza, and dozens of thousands of members of Hamas. I mean, not members of the military wing, but of all the civil and the political departments of Hamas. And this is going to be a very complicated mission, but because in the same time, IDF also emphasized in a very clear manner that General Zamir emphasized that we want to make sure that no one of the hostages will be hurt by the operation. So it's not a kind of a very limited commando operation. It's something very complicated. And we spoke only about the military as how many soldiers and how many units you will need, but we must understand, Neri, that in the day after, and we mentioned that we will need to. I mean, Israel will have to establish civil administration from zero in Gaza City. And you need to control 2 million people in total destroyed area. By the way, 2 million people who are full of hostility toward you after this tough war. And, we didn't start to speak about the economic aspect, the financial one, but it's going to cost Israel, I think, something between 30 to 40, even 50 billions shekels, because it seems that after Israel will occupy Gaza, or after Israel will promote this new operation, most of the world and mainly the donors, the Arab donors, will say to Israel, we will not take part in reconstruction or supporting from the civilian point of view the population in Gaza. You are right now the only responsible for the life of the people of Gaza, and you will pay for that. So, we will find ourselves, if we will implement and finish this operation, with a very heavy price from the military, economic, and also from the international and the regional political aspect.
Without a doubt, harrowing analysis, Michael. I wanted to unpack a few things you just said. 6 to 8 divisions for this new offensive.
No, between 6 to 8, I meant.
Right. Yeah, between 6 to 8 divisions. That's a lot of divisions. At the height of the offensive, I think, in late 2023, early 2024, I think there were 6 divisions.
Between 5 to 6, yes.
5 to 6, right. So this would be even more than that after 22 months of war across multiple fronts. Where are these soldiers going to come from, Michael?
All over Israel. I mean, of course, there is the regular army, and it seems that, almost all the army, all IDF will be concentrated in Gaza, and where right now we are lucky enough that we don't have another front, the northern front in Lebanon and Syria. Of course, there is nothing calm over there, but there is no really danger of a broad escalation. And it seems that also in the West Bank, we are not a few moments before a broad explosion. So, first of all, you will need, of course, the army, but you will need also the reserve army. And once again, we speak about hundreds of thousands of civilians who already paid enormous price for the service, for their service since October the 7th. And of course, this kind, once again, enlisting so many reserve army soldiers, this kind of decision has economic and political impact on Israel. I mean, the Israeli market will not be so stable if hundreds of thousands of workers will get actually out of this market for so many months. And once again, we spoke also about the political price. I mean, Israel is taking risk of sanctions. The Europeans already declared, I mean, several European states already declared that a kind of a punishment will be promoted against Israel if nothing will be changed. And I'm quite sure that if Israel will start the operation of occupying all Gaza City, I'm quite sure that we will have to prepare ourselves to much tougher challenges from the economic aspect.
Without doubt. Last week I had Jeremy Sakharov, former Israeli senior diplomat, and we talked about the diplomatic tsunami. So for anyone, I don't want to say looking to make themselves feel better, because you're not going to feel better after that episode. But for an analysis of the international dimension, also quite difficult these days, as we all know. Okay, so I mean, Michael, if and when the government decides to pull the trigger literally on this operation, how long do you think we have until that moment occurs, right? The issue of the time frame. So even, or especially if you need to call up thousands, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of reservists, we're still in the August summer holiday with all the kids, but then late next month, Rosh Hashanah and the High Holy Days. Is he going to wait till after Rosh Hashanah? Is he going to do it before Rosh Hashanah? Are soldiers going to be fighting in Gaza City Erev Chag? What do you think?
Once again, one big question mark. I assess, once again, Neri, in a very cautious manner, that the preparations will take something between 2 to 3 months. And, there were all kinds of reports here in the Israeli media that the decision that was taken last week relies on the assumption that this operation can be promoted from October the 7th, 25. So we have something more than two months for preparations.
Although Bibi said on Sunday that he ordered the IDF to shorten the preparations, that this would happen fairly quickly. I mean, again, we don't need to take what he says at face value, but
yes,
you're skeptical this can get off the ground fairly
there
quickly.
Are so many other considerations, by the way, professional regarding IDF and his situation right now, but also political and international. So I cannot really assess when exactly IDF will declare. We finished all the preparations. We are ready to promote the operation. I assess, Neri, regarding the question of how long will it take, that from the military point of view, it will not be so long event. I mean, something between weeks to several months. I think that this is the time needed to occupy Gaza City. But as we mentioned before, the main challenge and actually the main risk is not during the ground maneuver itself, but in the day after, because it seems that, and we will speak about it immediately, it seems that the basic challenge will not be to fight Hamas cells and Hamas units during the ground maneuver, but what will happen on the day after, because we know, and I think that in a very high likelihood, I can say that.
You can predict that?
Yeah. That in the day after, we will find ourselves in Gaza facing guerrilla warfare and terror warfare. And it will be very similar to the challenge that the American had in Iraq after 2003. I mean, after Saddam's regime was collapsed, but, the adventure only began after the collapse of Saddam's regime.
So, I mean, I guess we're dancing around the major question, and this is the major question on literally everyone's mind here in Israel and everywhere else. So when Netanyahu says, okay, this is the final battle with Hamas, and we're going to go into Gaza City, and then we're going to go into the central camps, Deir el-Balach, Nuseirat, these remaining, 3 enclaves, basically, that are not controlled by the IDF, and we're going to eliminate Hamas, we're going to destroy Hamas. What does that actually mean? Is it every last person with a Kalashnikov? Again, how do you measure total defeat of Hamas, elimination of Hamas? I mean, a guerrilla warfare insurgency is almost a given, but can that be eliminated, defeated, or how long will it take too?
Yeah, it's not the first and not the second time that we will use the term question mark. We don't really know. I think that, and this is my personal assessment, Neri, that if Netanyahu is serious enough, and if Netanyahu is really eager to occupy all Gaza, but also to stay in Gaza, so he will be very close to the implementation of the basic goals of the war. I mean, erasing the governmental and the military capacities of Hamas. But on the same time, and here I think that the government doesn't really speak with the public in a very frank manner. We will not release the hostages because Hamas will not be ready to wave a white flag and to release the hostages only because of a broad ground maneuver and even existential threat because of the Israeli operation. And it seems to me that, once again, in Gaza, and here we need to describe things in a very accurate manner. Of course, Hamas is not the same Hamas. I mean, the same Hamas of October the 7th. They don't have the same capacities. Most of the members, most of the leaders were killed during the war. But, and this is a very important point, they still have a leadership. They still have a frame of decision making. They still have enough members. And by the way, they recruit always young Palestinians to be instead of those who were killed. And right now, and it's very sad for many Israelis to admit that, but this is the right thing to say. Hamas is still the dominant player in Gaza. And if you want really to cause this player damage, that's okay. You can occupy all Gaza, but you must tell the Israeli public in a very direct manner, we will not see any hostages, and the price is going to be very heavy, and it's going to change your life, the Israelis, for a long time. And unfortunately, the Israelis do not hear such messages from their leadership.
Okay, we'll be right back after this brief message.
Israel Policy Forum is a policy organization rooted in the Jewish community. Our mission is to build support for a secure, Jewish, democratic Israel through a viable resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, advancing pragmatic U.S. policy towards the conflict, U.S.-Israel relations, and regional diplomacy among policymakers and community leaders. We promote policy measures endorsed by credible security experts, develop analysis and commentary, and convene programs that engage and educate leaders across the political, denominational, and generational spectrums. Our Young Professionals Initiative, IPF Atid, works to elevate the discourse among next-generation leaders by building community and facilitating engaging programs related to Israeli-Palestinian affairs. To learn more about our work, visit us online at israelpolicyforum.org and follow us on social media. If you rely on Israel Policy Forum for credible and nuanced analysis, please make a tax-deductible gift today at ipf.li/supportthepod or at the Support the Show link in the show notes.
So it will take a toll on the Israeli soldiers, on the hostages, the Israeli taxpayer, the economic cost of it, and also it will take a very long time. That would be an honest statement by the government to the public, as opposed to we're now ahead of an offensive that will bring us to victory in 2 or 3 months. That's what they're selling. Final point, just to touch on something you said earlier, Michael, the day after, this question still, the day after. Okay, let's say the IDF goes in, conquers the 25% of the Gaza Strip that it still doesn't hold. Gaza City, like we said, the central camps, the Mawasi humanitarian zone, quote-unquote defeats Hamas, although what that means we just talked about. It will take a lot more time than anyone imagines. But then Netanyahu has said, okay, we don't want to stay in Gaza, although he usually says it only in English, not in Hebrew. But okay, we'll take him at his word in English, American Bibi. We don't want to stay in Gaza. We want to hand over control to an alternative civil administration. Is that, to get deeper into this point, is that realistic? I mean, how can Israel do that? That, okay, conquers everything and then hands it over to who? To what?
I'm going to surprise you, Neri. Question mark. Mystery. We don't really know. I heard several of Netanyahu's interviews to the Western media. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to speak with only once with the Israeli media. And he said, by the way, not. And he didn't only mention the fact that a kind of mysterious Arab player is going to take control over Gaza. He also said that Israel is going to free the people of Gaza from Hamas.
Yes.
And it's not a coincidence that he didn't speak about this message in Hebrew, because I'm quite sure that there is no one in Israel that can accept this message or agree to this message, and that if he will elaborate this message in Hebrew to the Israeli public, I think that he will make a lot of Israelis very, very angry about the mission. Our goal, purpose is to free the people of Gaza from Hamas. I'm not sure that most of the Israelis are convinced about it. Now, regarding the question of the alternative of, who is the next address in Gaza if we say that it will not be Hamas, but not also the PA? So there is the fantasy of clans, of chieftaincies, rely on clans and big families in Gaza. And there is a kind of adventure during the last year of supporting Abu Shabab militia in the southern parts of Gaza, in Rafah area. But once again, we need not only to accept all the slogans that are being elaborated from the leadership, but also say what is our professional opinion. And I'm very critical toward this idea, because once again, I do think that this is a kind of a fantasy. We believe that, we can take the Palestinian society in Gaza, and instead of one political national address, we can create several traditional chieftaincies, which, the Palestinians themselves, they call this situation Batutan, like all the artificial states that were created in South Africa during the 70s and the 80s. And, I don't think that every clan in Gaza is focused on its own territory, its own business. They don't care about what is, for example, clan from Rafah will not take care. They will not be very interested about what is happening in the northern parts of Gaza. And they cannot really be an address, and they cannot really be, something that the Israelis can rely on in the day after. There is the idea that is being once again elaborated in the Israeli discourse, but actually you cannot find any proof of that. And this is the argument that an Arab state will come and will take responsibility for Gaza. But I didn't hear about no one who is ready to take this duty. I mean, the Egyptians, they already said no. UAE, of course not. So,
and especially not without a role for the Palestinian Authority and some kind of diplomatic process vis-a-vis, I guess, the Palestinian Authority, but also the bigger picture of Palestinian self-determination.
Exactly, absolutely. And, there is also a kind of a rumor, Neri, about Daflan, Mohammed Daflan, that right now he lives in the UAE. He's very close to MBZ, Mohammed bin Zayed. But, I'm not sure that he's powerful enough to take control over Gaza, that he's popular enough to be the new ruler of Gaza. So once again, we find ourselves, Neri, in a kind of quite, I will be very gentle. It's a kind of an old situation with no strategy and no plans for the day after, and a lot of illusions and a lot of slogans, but not realistic strategy. So this is a formula for disaster. Unfortunately, we are taking a jump into this disaster, and we know that. We are fully aware of that.
Well, some of us are fully aware of that, like the IDF and security chiefs, like, I guess, a big proportion of the Israeli public and a big proportion of the international community. We'll get to that in just a second. With regard to Mohammed Dakhlan, obviously the former security intelligence chief in the Gaza Strip under Yasser Arafat in the Palestinian Authority. He's now been living in exile from the Palestinian Authority in the UAE for many years, close advisor to the Emirati leadership. But I was told by someone who knows about these things that Dakhlan has a very nice life in the Gulf. I don't think he and his people are going to volunteer to return to what is left of Gaza to rebuild it. Again, he may play a role either politically or financially, but from afar, remote control.
And by the way, Neri, he has a lot of rivals in enemies in Gaza, because he is considered by many people in Gaza, by the way, not only Hamas, but many Palestinian citizens, as the prominent responsible for many violent events that took place between the years of 2006 to 2007. There was a kind of a civil war between Fatah and Hamas. In the year before, Hamas took control by force over Gaza, and Fatah and Dakhlan, they were responsible for the killing of many Palestinians. So, I'm quite sure that he's aware that if he will return to Gaza, there will be a lot of Palestinians who would like to take revenge of him because of all the horrible things of the past.
Yeah. Palestinian politics being Palestinian politics. Also, Dakhlan and his men unfortunately lost that civil war in 2006, 2007, and the people of Gaza and all of us here in Israel have been dealing with the consequences for, 18 years now, that Dakhlan and the PA lost Gaza to Hamas. Circling back, Michael, to the criticism of this of Israeli government and Netanyahu plan, there was an alternative option floated by the IDF and Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir for something a bit more limited. It's like, okay, we're going to expand the offensive against Hamas in Gaza, but basically instead of going all in into Gaza City and these other territories, we want to encircle Gaza City and wage this war of attrition against Hamas, targeted raids, targeted airstrikes. This was the alternative option presented by the generals in the Security Cabinet meeting last week. The Security Cabinet rejected that option, said it wouldn't lead to victory over Hamas, wouldn't lead to the release of the hostages. What did you think personally of this alternative option presented by the generals?
Well, it's I read about it, and it seems to me that it's more the same like the current situation. It's something in between, which doesn't really bring us to a very clear point. It's not a kind of decisive move, and it will only make the war longer, and it will stuck Israel in this swamp of Gaza more and more in a kind of war of attrition. I'm really afraid that even if we will promote a siege over Gaza City and the other two enclaves in Gaza, and we will say from this time we are going to wait until Hamas will be defeated, and we will find ourselves after 2, 3, 4 months, first of all, that there is enormous humanitarian crisis over there, and we will have to let humanitarian aid to get into those places, and that Hamas still exists. So what are you going to do? What would be your next steps? It seems that, like many former cases during this war, we always prefer a kind of interim way instead of a very clear way. And we stand for more than a year in front of a T-junction, but instead of taking one of the two ways of this T-junction, we prefer a kind of, a very bizarre way, which actually stuck us in a war of attrition. So I really believe that any kind of alternative to the idea of occupying Gaza City or all Gaza will not be really much better than the idea of taking control over all Gaza. Once again, we need to decide between two things. taking control over all Gaza or a deal. That's all. In between, only fantasies.
Yeah, and again, you and I have been talking about this.
Yes.
I don't want to say for how long. I suppose the generals put forward this
More than a year.
Yeah, more than a year. But I was going to say, I suppose the generals put forward this alternative option because it's the costs of it are a lot less than the full option of taking control of all of Gaza City, all of Gaza, and all the things we've been talking about for half an hour. That they were essentially trying to minimize the cost to Israel diplomatically, in terms of Israeli lives, in terms of the threat of the hostages, all the things we know. But yes, I don't even know if they believe that it will actually resolve the war. But maybe, and this brings us to my next question, maybe it's as a form of leverage to get Hamas back to the negotiating table. So I guess my question to you, Michael, if we're talking about alternative options to, this full offensive that Netanyahu and his government are threatening, is there still a prospect for Israel and Hamas to get back to negotiations? If not to end the war fully, at least a partial deal that we all know about, 60-day ceasefire, half the hostages. There's obviously speculation that all of these kind of threats and leaks and preparations for the offensive is just a way to pressure Hamas to get back to the negotiating table, and that Netanyahu himself would take a deal. So do you think there is still a prospect to get back to that option before we go and invade Gaza City?
Yeah, and the answer is very clear, and yes, sure. The question is, does Netanyahu or does the government really want to adopt this alternative? Because let's say things in a very clear manner. Once again, a very frank manner. If you want to return to the negotiations, and by the way, Hamas announces about its policy and about its basic readiness to return to negotiations in a very clear manner. But, and here we must be very realistic, Hamas still demand that, or still sticks two basic or two red lines. First of all, that any kind of negotiations will lead to the end of the war, and second, that any agreement will be followed by full withdrawal of Israel from most of the of Gaza Strip. And it seems that we prefer, or the government prefer, to stick this formula or this assumption that if we will only promote more and more and more pressure on Hamas, so finally they will be more flexible, and finally they will give up, and finally they will be ready to wave white flags or to evacuate Gaza or dismantle themselves. And it seems to me that again and again and again we return to the same square, and we find that it's ironic. We still, after 22 months, we do not understand the basic nature of this enemy, of this organization. This organization is ready to commit suicide, is ready to kill all the people of Gaza, and of course to kill the hostages, but not to wave white flags. So it seems to me that the answer is, yeah, of course you can return to the negotiations, and I think that Hamas doesn't care if it will be partial or full deal, as long as it will lead to the end of the war. And it seems to me that the basic key right now to any progress or any development in the negotiations will be President Trump, because it seems that he was the one who really succeeded a year ago to promote the former ceasefire. And it seems to me and to many Israelis that he's the only one that can really force both sides, and mainly Netanyahu, to end the war and to accept any kind of ceasefire, even if it will be followed by a full withdrawal and announcement about the end of the war.
It's all dependent on Trump, almost all dependent on Trump. But the problem is that Trump and his people have shown no inclination to actually force Netanyahu to end the war. when Trump was asked about this, I think last week, he said, "Well, it's up to Israel
That's right.
whether they invade Gaza City or not," and that's not a red light. It seems like a green light.
And we both know, Neri, that when was it? It was about a month ago when Netanyahu had his visit to Washington. And here in Israel, there was, even myself, we really had an impression that, maybe a hope, maybe a wishful thinking, that this will lead to the next ceasefire, to an agreement. And we found out that actually Netanyahu and Trump, they hold the same opinion, or actually Trump holds the same opinion like Netanyahu. So right now, once again, it seems that he's the only one who can really change the current situation.
Yeah, sadly, it's mostly up to him, to Donald Trump. But I think he also has been led to believe that with a little bit more pressure and a little bit more force, that they can get Hamas back to the negotiating table and make them capitulate, make them surrender. And like you said, for 22 months, it's not that people don't understand it, it's that people here don't want to understand that will almost certainly not happen. Final question, Michael, before I let you leave. The big picture question, I think, okay, let's say that Netanyahu is forced or chooses to go to a deal that ends the war. Obviously, he's refusing to do that. But let's say that happens, hopefully. The argument you hear from Netanyahu and the reason why he refuses to do that is because he says that if Israel ends the war now, before Hamas is, quote unquote, totally defeated, that the next October 7th is only a matter of time. Basically, it's like a black or white proposition, 1 or 0. You either go all the way and finish the job, or you end the war now, retreat, and then catch another October 7th down the line. Professionally speaking, what do you think about that argument put forward by Netanyahu and his government and his supporters, that everyone who says that the war needs to end in whatever shape or way or fashion is a defeatist that will pave the way for another massacre?
Well, I think that Netanyahu's analysis is right. I mean, it's not something that I can argue that you elaborate all kinds of fantasies. They will never try to commit once again October the 7th, not at all. But I think that this answer is quite biased and actually a partial answer, because Neri, when you check the other fronts that Israel had during the current war, I mean, since October the 7th, this argument of we will not let the Nazis, Hamas, to be once again on our fence, and we will eradicate them from Earth. You do not implement the same argument to the other fronts. For example, in Lebanon, there is a kind of ceasefire. Your wish is not to eradicate Hezbollah from Earth, and also in the West Bank and regarding Iran, which I consider as the basic challenge, the basic mission, the basic threat for Israel. So I'm asking myself, why do you need to be so dogmatic and so tough when it comes to Gaza? And of course, there are political and ideological considerations mixed in the current policy about Gaza. And I think that we once again return to the T junction. And then I think that, or I expect that the government will be frank enough to say, okay, we adopted, or we prefer taking control over all Gaza and stay in Gaza. By the way, there are some members of the government who announced that their vision is not only to control Gaza, but also to evacuate the people of Gaza. Very similar or what they translate as Trump's vision, and also to reestablish the settlements in Gaza. But please only tell us in a direct manner what are the prices? I mean, the economic, the isolation, the sanctions, the internal rift that will be developed, and of course, the fact that there are no hostages. You cannot release the hostages if we will take their full occupation. Or we can adopt the other option, which is the deal. And we are not naive. We know that if Israel will prefer the agreement, it means that we will have to announce about the end of the war, and we will have to commit almost full withdrawal from Gaza. Maybe Hamas will be relatively flexible regarding the perimeter, the territory.
Buffer zone.
Yeah, around the borderline between Israel and Gaza. And I think that if Israel will adopt the same policy, like the policy that is being promoted in Lebanon since the end of 2024, I mean, that, okay, there is a ceasefire, there is an agreement, but every time when you recognize a violation, when you recognize any plan to attack Israel or to smuggle weapons into Lebanon, you attack. And in Lebanon, there is almost every day all kind of aerial and other attacks. So why can't we adopt this formula also in Gaza? And I must admit, and this is my personal opinion, Neri, that when I'm trying to compare the two alternatives and to ask myself what are the prices of the two alternatives, I do think that the agreement, the ceasefire, of course, it's a painful option, but it's the least worst alternative when I'm comparing this alternative to the option of taking control over a part or all Gaza, which is really an option that is going to change dramatically our life for a long time.
I don't have anything to add, Michael. I think you put it really, really well. The cost versus, the current trajectory. It boggles the mind, and hopefully either Donald Trump or some other outside power ends this war before things get worse. Again, we can only hope, and to get the hostages out, of course. With that, Michael, thank you as always, and hopefully when you come on in another 3 months, there isn't another threatened Israeli offensive that this time for real will actually win the war and end the war. Hopefully they don't try to sell the same rhetoric and theory to us 3 months from now. So let's hope.
Let's hope.
Take care.
Thank you, Neri.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Okay, thanks again to Michael Milshtein, as always, for his generous time and insights. Also, special thanks to our producer, Jacob Gilman, and to all of you who support Israel Policy Forum's work. Do consider making a donation to Israel Policy Forum so we keep being a credible source of analysis and ideas on issues such as these that we all care deeply about, including this podcast. And most importantly, thank you for listening.